The lecture hall fell into absolute silence. Instructor Nara Velen stood at the podium, her data pad glowing softly as she explained the fundamentals of interspecies diplomatic protocol to her class of mixed-species students. The Kaltorians sat in the back rows, their multiple eyes tracking her every movement. The Yevnari occupied the middle section, their translucent wings folded carefully against the chairs. And in the front, the herbivorous Quellan students huddled together, their ears twitching nervously. They were all nervous for the same reason. Beside Nara's feet, pressed against her left leg, lay Kor. The Vrexian predator cub was only 6 months old, but already the size of an earthwolf. His obsidian scales gleamed under the artificial lights, and his triple rows of teeth were visible even when his mouth was closed. His tail, tipped with a bone spike, wrapped protectively around Nara's ankle. As I was saying, Nara continued, her voice steady and warm, the key to successful first contact is understanding that fear is a natural response. We must acknowledge it, not dismiss it. A Quellan student in the front row shifted uncomfortably, her hooves scraping against the floor. The sound was barely audible, but Kor's head snapped toward her instantly. His yellow eyes locked onto the movement, pupils narrowing to slits. The growl started low in his chest, a rumbling vibration that seemed to resonate through the floor itself. It was the sound of a predator identifying prey, the ancient song of the hunt encoded into his very DNA. Every herbivore in the room froze, their instincts screaming at them to run, but running would trigger the chase. Everyone knew that. Nara didn't flinch. She didn't even look down. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small treat, something she'd prepared from synthesized Vrexian game meat. With practiced ease, she held it beside her leg, just within Kor's line of sight. Kor, she said softly, her tone gentle but firm. Easy. The growl continued for another heartbeat. Kor's muscles were tensed, his hunting instincts fully engaged. The Quellan student had gone completely still, her large eyes wide with terror. The rest of the class held their breath, waiting for the inevitable violence that every predator species was capable of. Then Kor's eyes flickered up to Nara's face. His growl faltered, softened, and finally ceased. His posture relaxed incrementally, the deadly tension draining from his young body. With a small huff that might have been frustration or submission, he turned away from the Quellan and gently took the treat from Nara's fingers. "Good boy," Nara said, and the warmth in her voice was genuine, filled with pride and affection. She scratched behind the ridge of scales on his head, and Kor's tail unwrapped from her ankle to thump softly against the floor in contentment. The contrast was startling. One moment a lethal predator, the next a creature seeking approval and comfort from the human beside him. The collective exhale from the class was audible. "What you just witnessed," Nara said, returning her attention to her students, "is the foundation of trust." Kor's instincts told him to respond to perceived prey movement. My instincts told me to remain calm because panic would escalate the situation. She gestured to the cub, now contentedly gnawing on his treat. But more importantly, our bond told him that I was safe, that this environment was safe, and that he could override his programming. A Kaltorian in the back raised one of her 3-fingered hands. "Instructor Velen, with respect, how is this relevant to diplomatic protocol? That creature is a Vrexian predator. Your species and his have no evolutionary connection. You should be prey to him, not..." "Whatever this is," Nara smiled. It was the same question she received in every class, though worded differently each time. "That's exactly the point, Cadet Shrix. Humans have no evolutionary connection with Vrexians, yet here we are. Do you know why that is?" The Kaltorian's eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of confusion in her species. "No, instructor. Because humans have been doing this for thousands of years," Nara explained, beginning to pace slowly around the podium. Kor immediately rose to follow her, staying close to her side like a shadow. "On Earth, our ancestors took wolves, apex predators that could easily kill them, and formed bonds. They turned predators into partners. We did the same with horses, with raptors, with creatures that had every reason to see us as either threats or food." She stopped and looked across the diverse faces in her classroom. "Every species in the Galactic Union has told me the same thing, that it's impossible, that it defies natural law, that predator and prey cannot coexist without the barrier of technology or force. But humans never accepted that limitation. We looked at what should be our enemies and asked, what if? Nara reached down and rested her hand on Kor's head. The cub leaned into her touch, his eyes half closed in pleasure. The Vrexians are one of the most feared predator species in known space. They're aggressive, territorial, and their hunting instinct is second to none. When I volunteered to raise Kor as part of the interspecies integration program, every non-human on the council called me insane. She smiled. They were probably right. But here's what they didn't understand. Bonding with a predator isn't about dominating them or suppressing their nature. It's about communication, consistency, and respect. Kor is still a predator. He'll always be a predator, but he's learned that I'm his pack, and pack doesn't hunt pack. The Quellan student who had nearly been the target of Kor's attention finally found her voice, though it wavered. But instructor, what if he hadn't stopped? What if his instincts had been stronger than his bond with you? Nara's expression grew serious. That's a fair question, and I won't lie to you. There's always risk. Kor is young, still learning. There may come a day when his instincts override his training. But that same risk exists in every diplomatic encounter we have. Every time you board a ship with a species you don't fully understand, every time you negotiate with a culture whose values differ from yours, you're taking a leap of faith. She gestured to Kor, who had settled back down beside her. The difference is that I've chosen to build that bridge starting here, with a species everyone said was incompatible with cooperation. If I can teach Kor that not every movement is prey, that not every unfamiliar scent is a threat, then maybe we can teach entire civilizations the same lesson. A heavy silence fell over the room, but this time it wasn't fear. It was contemplation. Finally, a Yevnari student spoke up, her voice melodic and thoughtful. You're saying that humans are uniquely suited for interspecies diplomacy because you've been doing it longer than anyone else. Not longer, Nara corrected gently. Just differently. We've always been willing to take risks that others wouldn't, to extend trust when logic said we shouldn't. And yes, sometimes we got hurt. Sometimes we failed. But when we succeeded, she scratched Kor's head again and his tail thumped happily. When we succeeded, we turned the impossible into the everyday. As the class ended and students filed out, many of them cast cautious but curious glances at Kor. The Quellan student paused at the door, gathering courage, before approaching slowly. Instructor, she said quietly. May I try to give him a treat? Nara's smile was radiant. Of course. Just move slowly and let him sniff your hand first. As the trembling herbivore extended her hoof toward the predator cub, and as Kor gently sniffed and accepted her offering with careful teeth, Nara thought about the future. About a galaxy learning what humanity had always known. That the distance between predator and friend was shorter than anyone imagined. It just took someone brave enough to cross it first. And maybe, just maybe, to say good boy when they did.